Power is a performance until someone stops writing the script. Duke Alaric Voss stands alone in the grand hall of Revarin, a cathedral of black stone and burning crystal where even light knows to bow. His shadow stretches across marble so polished it mirrors the chandeliers overhead, each one a constellation of captured fire. Courtiers freeze mid-breath when he enters. Generals lower their eyes. Ambassadors rehearse their words 3 times before speaking. He is the iron fist that shaped a fractured duchy into an empire's threat, the tactician who turned border skirmishes into annexations, the name whispered in war rooms from the steppes to the coastal protectorates. Yet tonight, as storm clouds gather over the citadel and rain begins to claw at the windows, Alaric feels something he has not felt in years. The floor beneath him is shifting, and he does not know why. Somewhere in the hidden architecture of his reign, a support beam has been removed. And the collapse is coming. Stay with me until the end of this story. Watch how empires are built on invisible foundations. And if you are seeing this from your city, whether it is raining or burning or silent, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Because what happens next will rewrite everything you thought you knew about control. Revarin does not forgive weakness. The duchy is a blade sharpened on centuries of betrayal, carved from mountain passes and iron mines, ruled by men who understood that survival demands cruelty. Alaric inherited it at 23 after his father choked on poisoned wine at a treaty signing. The assassins were never found. Alaric did not bother looking. Instead, he executed the 12 nobles who attended the dinner, their families, and anyone who questioned the method. Within a year, Revarin's borders expanded. Within 3, neighboring lords sent tribute rather than risk war. By 30, Alaric Voss was a legend, sculpted in violence and cold brilliance. But legends require architects. Lady Seraphine Hale arrived at court 6 years ago as the daughter of a disgraced earl, her family name tarnished by accusations of embezzlement and treason. She had no dowry, no allies, and no illusions about her value. What she had was a mind that could see 3 moves ahead in any negotiation and a gift for languages that allowed her to decode intercepted correspondence faster than Alaric's entire intelligence network. He married her within 4 months, not out of love, but necessity. She was useful. And in Revarin, usefulness was the highest form of currency. The wedding was a transaction, the marriage a claustration. Seraphine's chambers occupy the eastern wing of the citadel, a suite of rooms designed to impress visitors and imprison its occupant. Velvet curtains the color of dried blood frame windows that overlook the training yards, where soldiers drill in formations she designed. Her writing desk sits beneath a portrait of Alaric's grandfather, a man who once burned an entire village to prove a point about taxation. She works there every night, long after the court has emptied and the fires have dimmed, translating supply reports, drafting counterintelligence protocols, mapping economic choke points that could starve rival territories into submission. Alaric never reads her work. He takes it, presents it as his own, and watches men twice his age nod in admiration. Tonight, she sits at that desk with ink-stained fingers and a letter she should not have seen. It was delivered by mistake, slipped into her correspondence by a nervous courier who confused her seal with the Duke's. The wax is still warm. The handwriting belongs to Lord Gren, Alaric's chief military advisor, and the closest thing the Duke has to a friend. Your Grace, the matter we discussed remains unresolved. The Duchess's continued presence poses a risk we can no longer afford. Her knowledge of our operations is comprehensive. Should she choose to speak, or worse, defect, the consequences would be catastrophic. I recommend a permanent solution. The Northern Pass offers opportunities for accidents. I await your command. Seraphine reads it 3 times. Her hands do not shake. Her breath does not catch. She has been preparing for this moment since the day she realized Alaric did not see her as a partner, but as a resource to be extracted and eventually discarded. She folds the letter carefully, places it in a locked drawer beneath her notes on grain distribution, and returns to her work. The storm outside intensifies. Rain hammers the windows like 1,000 fists demanding entry. Lightning splits the sky, throwing the citadel into stark relief, black stone against white fire. Seraphine does not flinch. She is calculating. Alaric has always believed he owns her. Tonight, she will begin teaching him the difference between possession and control. The Grand Hall is designed to intimidate. 60 feet of vaulted ceiling, columns carved with scenes of conquest, a throne elevated on a dais so high that petitioners must crane their necks to meet the Duke's gaze. Alaric sits there now, one hand resting on the arm of the chair, the other holding a glass of wine so dark it looks like liquid night. He is listening to Lord Davin, a minor noble who controls the eastern trade routes, present a proposal for increasing tariffs on imported steel. Davin is sweating. He speaks too quickly, his words tripping over each other in his eagerness to please. Alaric does not interrupt. He lets the silence grow until it becomes unbearable, then sets down his glass with a sound like a judge's gavel. Your proposal is idiotic. Davin's face drains of color. Increasing tariffs will drive merchants to the southern ports. We lose revenue. The coastal protectorates gain leverage. You have given me a plan that strengthens our enemies and weakens our treasury. Do you understand what that makes you? Davin opens his mouth. No sound comes out. A liability. Alaric gestures to the guards. They move forward with the efficiency of men who have done this before. Wait, Your Grace, please. I can revise. Revision implies competence. You have demonstrated none. Remove him. The guards drag Davin out. His protests echo down the hallway until a door slams and cuts them off. The remaining courtiers stand frozen, their eyes fixed on the floor. Alaric picks up his wine again and takes a slow sip. Does anyone else have proposals that waste my time? Silence. Good. Dismissed. Ouch. They leave in a hurry, their footsteps a scramble of relief and terror. When the hall empties, Alaric descends from the throne and walks to the war room adjacent to the main chamber. It is a smaller space, lined with maps and correspondence, illuminated by a single chandelier that casts everything in shades of amber and ash. Lord Gren is waiting. He is a broad man with a soldier's posture and a diplomat's smile, the kind of man who can gut an enemy at dinner and toast to peace afterward. He bows as Alaric enters. Your Grace, Lord Davin's proposal was as expected. A test of his intelligence. He failed. He always does. Alaric moves to the central table, where a map of the northern territories is spread like a dissected carcass. Red pins mark military outposts. Blue pins mark supply depots. Black pins mark locations of strategic interest. He studies it with the focus of a man reading scripture. The steppes are mobilizing again. Border scouts report increased troop movements near the Iron Ridge. Then, Gren nods. I have seen the reports. Seraphine's analysis suggests they are testing our response times. Alaric's jaw tightens at the mention of her name, though he does not look up. Her analysis is accurate, as always. She has a remarkable mind. She has a useful mind. There is a difference. Gren hesitates, then steps closer, lowering his voice. About the matter we discussed. Not here. Alaric's tone is a blade. Gren falls silent. The Duke traces a line on the map from Ravarin to the northern pass, his finger moving with the precision of a scalpel. Seraphine will accompany me to the summit with the coastal protectorates next month. I need her for the negotiations. After that, we will address the situation. Understood, Your Grace. Alaric finally looks up, his eyes meeting Gren's with the weight of absolute authority. She is a tool, Gren. Valuable, yes. Irreplaceable, no. When a tool becomes a risk, you replace it. That is how power endures. Gren bows again, deeper this time. Of course, Your Grace. As he leaves, Alaric returns his attention to the map. He does not see the shadow that moves past the doorway. He does not hear the soft rustle of skirts retreating down the hall. Seraphine has been standing just beyond the threshold, her presence as silent as a held breath, listening to every word. She does not cry. She does not rage. She walks back to her chambers with the calm of someone who has just received confirmation of a hypothesis. Alaric believes he owns her mind because he uses its output. He believes he controls her because she obeys his commands. But ownership is not control, and obedience is not surrender. Seraphine locks the door behind her and retrieves the letter from Lord Gren. She reads it again, this time with a pen in hand, annotating the margins with names, dates, and locations. She's building a map of her own, not of territories or supply lines, but of leverage. Every secret Alaric has shared, every vulnerable point in his network, every alliance held together by fear rather than loyalty. She works through the night, the storm outside a symphony of chaos that matches the architecture of her thoughts. By dawn, she has a plan. It is elegant, ruthless, and irreversible. Alaric Voss will learn what it means to lose the only thing that made him great. 3 days later, the court gathers for the annual spring address, a tradition where the Duke outlines his vision for the coming season. It is theater disguised as governance, an opportunity for Alaric to remind everyone why they fear him. The grand hall is packed. Nobles in embroidered silk, merchants in practical wool, soldiers in polished armor. They fill the space like a congregation awaiting a sermon. Alaric stands at the podium, his presence a gravity well that pulls every eye toward him. He wears black trimmed with silver, a uniform that suggests both mourning and monarchy. His voice, when he speaks, is a weapon honed on 1,000 speeches. Ravarin does not beg for peace. We do not negotiate from weakness. We do not bend to the whims of foreign powers who mistake our patience for vulnerability. Applause erupts. He lets it swell, then cuts it off with a raised hand. This season, we will fortify the northern border. We will expand our trade agreements with the Iron Republics. We will remind the coastal protectorates that their waters are navigable only because we allow it. More applause. Alaric's eyes sweep the room, cataloging reactions, noting who claps too quickly and who hesitates. He is a conductor, and the court is his orchestra. Our strength is not accidental. It is the result of strategy, discipline, and vision. Vision that sees beyond the horizon. Strategy that anticipates the enemy's move before they make it. Discipline that turns chaos into order. He pauses, letting the words settle. These are the pillars upon which Ravarin stands, and they are the pillars upon which we will build an empire. The hall erupts again. Men pound fists on tables. Women raise glasses. Alaric descends from the podium and moves through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting praise, performing the role he has perfected. Seraphine watches from the gallery above, her expression unreadable. She is dressed in deep green, a color that makes her nearly invisible against the velvet drapes. No one looks up. No one acknowledges her. She is a ghost in her own court, but ghosts see everything. Below, Alaric is speaking with Lady Morel, a young noblewoman recently widowed and conveniently beautiful. She laughs at something he says, her hand resting on his arm just a moment too long. The court notices. Whispers ripple through the room like wind through wheat. Seraphine does not react. She has been expecting this. Alaric has always been careless with his performances. He believes the audience sees only what he shows them. He does not realize that some of them are watching the director, not the actor. That evening, Seraphine requests a private audience. Alaric grants it with the indifference of a king humoring a servant. They meet in his study, a room dominated by a fireplace large enough to roast a cow and shelves lined with books he has never read. He pours himself a drink and does not offer her one. What is it? Seraphine stands with her hands folded, her posture perfect, her voice even. I wanted to discuss the summit with the coastal protectorates. What about it? The terms you outlined in your address this morning will not hold. Their economy is too fragmented. They will agree in principle and violate in practice. You need a different approach. Alaric takes a slow sip, his eyes never leaving hers. And you have one. I do. She moves to the desk, spreads a document she has prepared, and begins to explain. Her voice is clinical, precise, devoid of emotion. She outlines a 3-phase negotiation strategy that exploits internal divisions among the protectorates, leverages Ravarin's control of key trade routes, and positions Alaric as a mediator rather than a conqueror. It is brilliant, and he knows it. He listens without interrupting, his expression giving nothing away. When she finishes, he sets down his glass and leans back in his chair. You always deliver, Seraphine. That is why I keep you. The words land like a slap disguised as a compliment. She does not flinch. I serve Ravarin, Your Grace, as I always have. Good. Prepare the briefing documents. I will present this at the summit. Of course, it giggle. She gathers her papers and turns to leave. As she reaches the door, Alaric speaks again, his tone casual but pointed. You looked lovely in the gallery tonight. Green suits you. She pauses, her hand on the door handle. Thank you, Your Grace. Though I suspect you would look better beside me than above me. The implication is clear. Seraphine does not turn around. I'm content where I am. Are you? The question hangs in the air. She does not answer. She leaves, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Alaric stares at the space where she stood, a flicker of something crossing his face. Not guilt? Not affection? Curiosity, maybe. Or irritation. He is not sure which. He finishes his drink and dismisses the thought. Seraphine is a tool, and tools do not have opinions. The summit is scheduled for mid-spring, but the real work happens in the weeks leading up to it. Seraphine spends her days in the hidden chamber beneath the library, a space Alaric does not know exists. It was once a storage vault for banned texts and confiscated correspondence. She converted it into a nerve center for intelligence operations, a place where she can think without performance. The walls are lined with maps, coded messages, and dossiers on every major player in the region. A single desk sits in the center, cluttered with inkpots, ciphers, and reports. Candles provide the only light, their flames steady in the still air. This is where Seraphine does the work that makes Alaric's reign possible. This is where she has decided to dismantle it. She begins with the cipher. Every major communication between Riveran and its allies is encoded using a system Seraphine developed 3 years ago. It is a complex rotation cipher that changes based on the lunar cycle, rendering intercepted messages useless without the key. Alaric believes the system is secure because he believes he controls it. He does not realize that Seraphine is the system. She creates a duplicate key, one that will decode future messages incorrectly, turning strategic intelligence into gibberish. She plants it in Alaric's private vault, the one he keeps in his chambers, the one he thinks no one else can access. She has been practicing the lock for months, her fingers learning the rhythm of pins and tumblers until she can open it in under 30 seconds. The night she makes the switch, the citadel is silent except for the wind howling through the battlements. She moves through the corridors like smoke. Avoiding guards she has memorized the patrol patterns of, slipping past checkpoints she knows are undermanned. Alaric is in the war room with Lord Gren, arguing over troop deployments. She has 90 minutes. The vault is hidden behind a tapestry depicting the first Duke of Riveran slaying a dragon. The lock is brass, intricate, beautiful. She kneels, inserts her picks, and begins to work. The first pin catches, then the second. The third resists, but she adjusts the tension and feels it give. The mechanism clicks open. Inside the vault is a treasury of power, gold coins, signed treaties, blackmail material on half the nobility, and in a leather case on the top shelf, the cipher key. Seraphine removes it, replaces it with her forgery, and closes the vault. The entire operation takes 4 minutes. She is back in her chambers before Alaric finishes his meeting. That night, she sleeps for the first time in weeks, not because she is at peace, but because she has crossed a line she cannot uncross. The war has begun, and Alaric does not even know he is fighting it. The first sign of trouble comes a week later. A coded message from the Iron Republics arrives, requesting clarification on a proposed trade agreement. Alaric decodes it using the false key and interprets it as a threat. He mobilizes a battalion to the eastern border, a move that the Republic see as unprovoked aggression. Tensions spike. Diplomatic channels freeze. Lord Gren is baffled. Your Grace, their message was clear. They are requesting negotiation, not issuing an ultimatum. Why did we deploy troops? Alaric slams the decoded message onto the table. Read it yourself. They are demanding we cede control of the mountain passes or face economic sanctions. That is extortion. Gren reads the message, frowns, reads it again. Gren reads This does not match the original tone of their communications. Are you certain the cipher is correct? The cipher has never failed. Then perhaps the message was tampered with. Alaric's eyes narrow. By whom? Gren does not answer, but the question hangs in the room like smoke. Seraphine, summoned to explain, arrives with her usual composure. She reads the decoded message, compares it to the original cipher, and shakes her head. The cipher is functioning as designed, Your Grace. However, the Iron Republics may be using a secondary encryption layer we have not encountered before. I recommend sending a direct envoy to clarify their intent before escalating further. It is a lie wrapped in logic. Alaric cannot see the seam. Fine, arrange it, but keep the troops in position. I will not be caught unprepared. Seraphine bows and leaves. In the hallway, she allows herself a small smile. The machine is breaking, and Alaric is blaming everyone but the person who built it. Over the next 3 weeks, similar incidents multiply. A supply shipment to the northern outpost is rerouted based on faulty intelligence, leaving soldiers without winter provisions. A treaty with the steppes collapses after Alaric misreads their terms and insults their ambassador. A financial report miscalculates tax revenue, forcing the Duke to cancel a public works project that would have secured loyalty among the lower classes. Each failure is small, containable, but together they form a pattern. The court begins to whisper. Lord Gren starts reviewing old communications, searching for discrepancies. Alaric grows paranoid, convinced that spies have infiltrated his network. He summons Seraphine more frequently, demanding explanations, corrections, solutions. She provides them all, each one a patch that holds just long enough to delay total collapse. She is careful, methodical. She knows that if she moves too quickly, he will see her hand. So she lets the decay spread slowly like rotten timber, invisible until the structure fails. Lady Morel, meanwhile, becomes a fixture at Alaric's side. She dines with him, attends strategy sessions, whispers advice he pretends to consider. The court takes note. Some see it as a signal that Seraphine's influence is waning. Others see it as confirmation of rumors that have circulated for months. Seraphine watches it all from her gallery perch, her face a mask of indifference. But inside, she is cataloging every insult, every dismissal, every moment Alaric parades his control over her dignity. She does not hate him. Hate requires investment. What she feels is something colder, a recognition that he is a man who mistakes cruelty for strength and possession for power. And men like that do not deserve empires. The night before the summit, Alaric hosts a feast in the Grand Hall. It is an extravagant display of wealth and dominance, tables groaning under roasted game, barrels of wine, musicians playing compositions written specifically to glorify the Duke. The nobility gorges itself on spectacle and alcohol, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. Alaric sits at the head of the table, Lady Morel to his right, Lord Gren to his left. Seraphine is seated at the far end, near the servants' entrance, a position designed to humiliate. She does not react. She eats slowly, drinks sparingly, and watches. Midway through the meal, Alaric rises, glass in hand. A toast to Raverin, to strength, to victories yet to come. The hall roars its approval. Glasses are raised. Wine is spilled. Alaric drinks deeply, then sets his glass down and gestures to Lady Morel, and to the woman who reminds me that power is meant to be enjoyed, not merely wielded. The statement is deliberate, a public declaration. Lady Morel blushes, the court applauds. Seraphine does not move, but beneath the table her hand closes into a fist so tight her nails draw blood. When the feast ends and the guests stagger out into the night, Seraphine returns to her chambers. She does not sleep. She sits at her desk and writes a letter. It is addressed to Lord Cadmus, the Duke of the Coastal Protectorates, Alaric's primary rival, and the man who once offered her asylum when her family fell from grace. The letter is brief, precise. It outlines Alaric's vulnerabilities, his reliance on intelligence he does not understand, his willingness to escalate conflicts he cannot win. It offers Cadmus an alliance, not between nations, but between strategists. Seraphine seals the letter with wax, presses her ring into it, and places it in a satchel she has packed over the past month. Clothing, documents, gold, everything she needs to disappear. She will leave tonight. Before Alaric can give the order, Gren has been waiting to execute. Before the northern pass becomes her grave. But first, she has one final task. She descends to Alaric's study, moving through the citadel's shadows like a knife through silk. The Duke is asleep, drunk on wine and arrogance. She slips into the vault again, this time removing every critical document, treaties, supply contracts, blackmail files. She leaves the gold. She has no use for wealth that cannot think. By the time the first light of dawn touches the citadel's towers, Seraphine is gone, and Alaric's empire, built on stolen brilliance, begins its slow, inevitable collapse. Quotes. Alaric wakes to chaos. The vault is empty. The cipher is useless. Half his intelligence network has gone silent. Lord Gren is shouting something about troop movements, but the words do not make sense, because the reports do not make sense, because the system that made sense of them is gone. Seraphine is gone. He tears through the citadel like a man possessed, demanding answers no one can provide. The guards saw nothing, the servants know nothing. Even Gren, usually unflappable, looks shaken. Your Grace, we must assume she has defected. If she shares what she knows with the coastal protectorates, find her. Your Grace, she could be anywhere by now. The northern routes, the southern ports. I said find her. Gren bows and leaves. Alaric stands alone in the war room, staring at the maps that no longer make sense, the strategies that no longer hold, the empire that suddenly feels like a house of cards in a rising wind. For the first time in his life, Duke Alaric Voss does not know what to do. And somewhere, riding hard toward the coast with a satchel of secrets and a plan forged in silence, Seraphine Hale smiles. Because power is not given. It is not inherited. It is built, brick by invisible brick, by the people no one bothers to see. And when they stop building, the whole structure comes down. Bullshit. Cliffhanger. 3 months later, a messenger arrives at the gates of Raverin. He carries a single sealed letter bearing the mark of the coastal protectorates. The guards bring it to Alaric, who opens it with hands that tremble despite his best effort to still them. Inside, written in handwriting he would recognize anywhere, are 4 sentences. I will meet you at the neutral fields at noon 7 days from now. Bring no army. Bring no lies. Come alone, or do not come at all. It is unsigned. It does not need to be. Alaric reads it 3 times. Then he summons Lord Gren, orders his fastest horse prepared, and begins the longest week of his life. Because the woman he thought he owned has returned, and she is no longer his. 7 days is a lifetime when you are losing everything you believed you controlled. Alaric does not sleep. He paces the war room until the stone floors bear the marks of his boots, drinks wine that tastes like ash, and stares at maps that no longer obey him. The citadel feels different now, hollower, as if Seraphine's absence has removed some invisible load-bearing wall and the whole structure is slowly tilting toward collapse. His advisors speak in careful voices. His generals hesitate before executing orders. Even the servants move differently, their eyes flickering toward empty doorways as if expecting a ghost to appear. The truth settles over him like frost. He never ruled Raverin, she did. He was the performance, she was the engine. Lord Gren enters without knocking, which tells Alaric everything about how far his authority has slipped. The older man carries reports, his face carved from tension and sleepless nights. Your Grace, the Iron Republics have severed the trade agreement. They're calling our troop deployment an act of aggression. The steppes are demanding reparations for the insult to their ambassador. And the coastal protectorates have closed their ports to our merchants. Alaric does not look up from the letter in his hands. Seraphine's handwriting is a taunt, each stroke precise as a surgical incision. How much has she told them? Gren sets the reports on the table with the weight of a man laying down weapons he can no longer lift. We do not know. But the speed of their responses suggests she has provided them with comprehensive intelligence. Supply routes, defensive weaknesses, internal conflicts among the nobility. Everything she had access to. Everything I gave her access to. The words escape before Alaric can catch them. Gren does not respond. The silence is answer enough. Alaric crushes the letter in his fist, then smooths it out again because destroying it changes nothing. The neutral fields. 7 days. Come alone. The command in those lines is unmistakable. She is dictating terms now. And he is the one being summoned. This is what power sounds like when it stops pretending to ask permission. Alaric has used that voice his entire life. Hearing it directed at him feels like touching a blade he forged and forgot was sharp. Prepare my horse. I leave at dawn. Gren's eyes widen. Your Grace, this is clearly a trap. She could have the protectorates waiting, an ambush, assassins. You cannot, I said, prepare my horse. The steel in his voice is reflex, muscle memory from years of command. But it rings hollow now, an echo of authority rather than the thing itself. Gren hears it. Alaric hears it. Neither man acknowledges it. As you command, Your Grace. When Gren leaves, Alaric crosses to the window. Rain streaks the glass, turning the courtyard below into a watercolor of gray and black. He watches soldiers drill in formations Seraphine designed, moving through patterns she conceived, executing strategies she wrote. Every victory he claimed was built on her foundation. Every treaty he signed was negotiated with her words. Every fear his enemies felt was rooted in intelligence she gathered. He thought he was the apex predator. Turns out he was just the loudest voice in a room someone else constructed. The realization does not make him humble. It makes him furious. Because Duke Alaric Voss was not raised to lose. He was raised to take, to dominate, to stand in rooms until everyone else either bowed or bled. And now a woman he relegated to shadows and silence has stripped him bare in front of the entire region, turned his empire into a punchline, made him look like a fool wearing a crown he never earned. He will go to the neutral fields. But not to beg, not to negotiate. To remind her that dominance is not about intelligence, it is about will. And his has never broken. The ride north takes 4 days. Alaric travels with minimal escort despite Gren's protests. Just 6 men handpicked for loyalty and silence. They move fast, avoiding main roads, sleeping in abandoned wayhouses that smell of mold and old fires. He does not speak except to issue orders. His men do not ask questions. They have learned that curiosity around the Duke is a luxury the dead enjoy. On the second night, camped in a forest clearing under a sky choked with stars, Alaric sits alone by the fire and allows himself to think about her. Not as a tool, not as a resource, but as the woman who sat across from him at dinners and said nothing while he performed for audiences that never deserved her attention. Seraphine was always still. That was what he noticed first. In a court that thrived on posturing and noise, she moved through rooms like water, present but unobtrusive, watching everything and revealing nothing. He mistook that stillness for passivity, for compliance, for the kind of quiet that came from having nothing to say. He was wrong. Her stillness was the stillness of a predator deciding when to strike. And he handed her every weapon she needed, placed them in her hands, one classified document at a time, because he believed she would never think to use them against him. Possession is not love, but fear disguised as ownership. The phrase surfaces from somewhere he cannot name, maybe something she said once in a moment he was not listening. It sits in his chest like a stone. Did he love her? Does he love her now? He does not know. What he knows is that she was his duchess, his strategist, his silent architect. The idea of her belonging to someone else, offering her brilliance to foreign lords who will actually see her, actually credit her, actually treat her like the mind she is. The fury returns, hotter than the fire in front of him. He will get her back, not because he loves her, but because losing her means admitting he was never enough on his own. And Alaric Voss does not admit weakness. He eliminates it. The neutral fields are not fields at all, but a stretch of rocky plateau between Reverin and the coastal protectorates, a no-man's land where treaties are signed and duels are fought. The ground is hard pale stone veined with quartz that glitters in sunlight like broken glass. No trees, no cover, just open space under an indifferent sky. Alaric arrives at midday as instructed. His men remain a mile back, hidden in the tree line. He rides alone across the plateau, his horse's hooves striking stone with sounds like a hammer on an anvil. She is already there. Seraphine sits on a black mare at the center of the plateau, dressed in deep blue riding clothes that make her look like a slice of midnight against the pale rock. Her hair is pulled back, no jewelry, no crown. But she does not need ornamentation. Authority radiates from her like heat from coals. Behind her, 3 riders wait at a distance. Alaric recognizes the banner. Coastal Protectorates, which means she is not just a defector. She is an ally, an asset, a player. He stops his horse 20 feet from hers. For a long moment, neither speaks. The wind moves between them, carrying dust and the faint smell of distant rain. Alaric breaks first. He always breaks first. Silence is not a weapon he knows how to wield. You look well. Seraphine's expression does not change. You look tired. Her voice is the same, calm, even. But the context has shifted. Before, that calm was deference. Now it is dominance barely leashed. Alaric dismounts. She does not. The height difference is deliberate. Another message. He is the one looking up now. This is theater, Seraphine. Whatever point you are making, you have made it. Come home. Home. She repeats the word like she is tasting something bitter. Tell me, Alaric, when was Reverin ever my home? When I spent every night translating documents you took credit for? When you paraded another woman beside you while I sat near the servants? When Lord Gren wrote a letter recommending my assassination and you approved it, Alaric's jaw tightens. That letter was precautionary. Precautionary. Her laugh is sharp enough to draw blood. You were going to kill me because I knew too much. Because I had become inconvenient, not dangerous, not disloyal. Inconvenient. That is what I was worth to you. You were never just, do not. The command cracks like a whip. Alaric stops mid-sentence. Seraphine leans forward slightly, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that pins him in place. Do not stand there and revise history. You used me. You displayed me when it suited you and erased me when it did not. I built your empire, Alaric, every strategy, every treaty, every intelligence report that kept you 3 steps ahead of your enemies. I was the architect. You were the facade. He feels the truth of it in his bones. But admitting it is not something he has language for. So what then? You run to Cadmus, sell my secrets to the protectorates, burn everything we built? We did not build anything. I built it. You claimed it. She dismounts now, closing the distance between them until they are standing face to face. She is smaller than him by half a foot, but the way she holds herself makes the difference irrelevant. I am not here to burn your empire, Alaric. I am here to offer you terms. Terms. He says it like a curse. You think you can dictate terms to me? I know I can. Because without me, Raverin is collapsing. Your allies are abandoning you. Your intelligence network is blind. Your enemies are circling. You came here because you have no other options. Alaric's hands curl into fists. The urge to grab her, to force her back into the shape he needs her to take, is almost overwhelming. But something in her gaze stops him. A warning. A line he has not seen before. What do you want? Seraphine reaches into her saddlebag and produces a document. She unfolds it and holds it between them. A treaty. Between Ravarin and the coastal protectorates. Brokered by me. You will cede control of the northern trade routes. You will reduce your military presence along the border by 40%. You will issue a public statement acknowledging the contributions of your advisors to your reign. That last part is not about politics. It is about her. About credit. About being seen. Alaric's voice drops to something dangerous. You want me to humiliate myself. I want you to tell the truth. And if I refuse, then the protectorates move against you within the month. The Iron Republics will join them. The steppes will stay neutral and watch you fall. Ravarin will fracture. And you will be remembered as the duke who mistook cruelty for strength and lost everything because he could not see the person standing beside him. She says it without malice. Just fact. A diagnosis delivered by a surgeon who no longer has a stake in the patient's survival. Alaric stares at the document. His empire, reduced to terms and conditions on a piece of paper. His authority, contingent on her mercy. Everything he built, everything she built for him, now hers to grant or withhold. The rage is still there, but underneath it, something else is moving. Something that feels like the ground giving way beneath his feet. Why? The question comes out raw. Why do this? If you hate me so much, why offer terms at all? Why not just let me fall? Seraphine folds the document and tucks it back into her bag. Because I do not hate you, Alaric. Hate requires caring. What I feel is something simpler. I am tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of watching you perform greatness with my work. Tired of being treated like a possession instead of a person. She mounts her horse again, looking down at him with something that might be pity or might be indifference. He cannot tell. You have 7 days to decide. Sign the treaty and Ravarin survives, diminished but intact. Refuse and lose everything. The choice is yours. She turns her horse and begins to ride away. Alaric watches her go, his mind a riot of fury and calculation and something he does not have a name for. Seraphine. She stops but does not turn. Did you ever believe in us? In what we could have been? The pause stretches long enough that he thinks she will not answer. Then her voice comes back, carried on the wind. I believed in what I built. You were just the man who stood in front of it. She rides away. The protectorate guards follow, and Alaric is left alone on the plateau, the treaty unsigned in her saddlebag, his empire crumbling in her absence, his identity fracturing under the weight of a truth he can no longer avoid. He was never the power. He was the performance, and the woman he thought he owned just walked away with everything that mattered. Ichen. Alaric returns to Ravarin in silence. His men do not ask what happened. The look on his face is answer enough. When he enters the citadel, Lord Gren is waiting in the war room with more reports. More crises, more evidence of a machine falling apart without its operator. Your Grace, the situation has worsened. The northern outposts are requesting reinforcements we cannot spare. The Treasury is strained from cancelled trade agreements. The nobility is questioning your sign it. Gren stops mid-sentence. Your Grace? Alaric crosses to the table, sweeps the maps onto the floor with one violent motion, and slams his fist down hard enough to crack the wood. The treaty. Seraphine's terms. Bring it to me, and I will sign it. Gren stares at him like he has started speaking a foreign language. Your Grace, those terms are unacceptable. They strip us of strategic assets, reduce our military capacity, and force you to publicly acknowledge, I know what they do. Alaric's voice is a blade. I also know what happens if I refuse. Raverin falls. I fall. And everything I have spent my life building becomes rubble. So bring me the treaty, and I will sign it. Because the alternative is worse. Gren does not move. His face is a battleground of loyalty and disbelief. She has won, then. Alaric meets his gaze, and for the first time in years, there is no performance in his eyes. Just exhaustion. She won the moment I stopped seeing her. But the treaty is signed 3 days later in a private ceremony witnessed only by representatives from both sides. Alaric's hand shakes as he presses his seal into the wax. Not from fear. From rage so tightly controlled it vibrates through his bones. Seraphine is not present. She sends an envoy, a cold-eyed woman who delivers the countersigned document and leaves without a word. The message is clear. Seraphine does not need to witness his submission. She has already moved on. The public statement is read in the Grand Hall a week later. Alaric stands at the podium, the same place he delivered 100 speeches claiming credit for brilliance that was never his, and reads words that taste like poison. The success of Ravarin has always been the result of collaboration. I have been fortunate to work alongside advisors whose intelligence and dedication have shaped our victories. I recognize now that leadership is not the work of one man, but the collective effort of many minds. Moving forward, I commit to ensuring that those contributions are acknowledged and honored. The court listens in stunned silence. No one applauds. No one moves. They understand what they are hearing. The Duke is admitting he was not the architect. And in Ravarin, that admission is a kind of death. When Alaric steps down from the podium, he does not look at anyone. He walks back to his chambers, closes the door, and for the first time since his father died, allows himself to break, not with tears. Alaric Voss does not cry, but with the kind of silence that comes when a man realizes he has been performing strength for so long that he forgot to build the real thing. Months pass. Ravarin stabilizes under the new terms, but the duchy is smaller now, quieter. The court functions, but the energy has changed. Nobles who once competed for Alaric's favor now look past him, their attention shifting to the real powers in the region. The coastal protectorates, the iron republics, the strategists and diplomats who actually shape policy. Alaric governs. He signs documents. He attends meetings. He makes decisions. But the weight of performance is gone. What remains is something more fragile, the realization that he is competent but not exceptional, functional but not brilliant. A man who can maintain what others build but cannot create it himself. He thinks about Seraphine constantly, not with longing, not even with anger anymore, but with the kind of recognition that comes too late to matter. She was not his possession, she was his equal, and he treated her like furniture. Reports reach him occasionally. Seraphine has taken a position with the coastal protectorates as chief strategist. She brokers treaties, designs economic policy. Her name appears in dispatches and trade agreements, no longer hidden behind someone else's title. She is seen now, acknowledged, respected. She is everything she always was. The difference is that now the world knows it. Alaric wonders if she ever thinks about him, if she remembers the nights they sat across from each other in silence, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between them. If she ever considered that he might have changed, might have learned, might have become the partner she deserved instead of the tyrant she escaped. He will never know, because Seraphine does not look back. 1 year after the treaty, Alaric receives a letter. It arrives without ceremony, delivered by a courier who does not wait for a response. The handwriting is hers. Inside, no greeting, no preamble, just a single paragraph. You asked me once if I believed in us. The answer is no. I believed in what I could build. You were the space I was forced to build it in. I do not regret leaving, but I do not celebrate your collapse either. You are not my victory, Alaric. You are simply no longer my problem. I hope you find a way to be enough on your own. I suspect you will not. There is no signature. She does not need one. Alaric reads it 3 times. Then he folds it carefully and places it in the same drawer where he keeps his father's signet ring and the first treaty he ever signed. Artifacts of a man he used to be. He does not write back. There is nothing to say that would matter. Dramatz. That night, Alaric stands in the war room alone. The maps are updated. The reports are filed. The citadel is quiet, except for the wind rattling the windows. He pours a glass of wine and stares at the empty chair where Seraphine used to sit, offering strategies he claimed as his own. Watching him perform authority he never actually possessed. The truth sits in his chest like a broken bone that never set right. He was never the duke she needed, and she was never the possession he thought she was. Power is not imposed. It is built, understood, and earned. And those once unseen often hold the power to rewrite everything. Alaric drains his glass and sets it down with a sound like a door closing. He will survive. Ravarin will survive. But the empire he imagined, the legend he performed, the dominance he believed was his birthright, all of that is gone. And the woman who took it is building something greater without him. Somewhere across the region, in a tower overlooking the coastal protectorates, Seraphine sits at her own desk. No portraits of dead men on the walls. No velvet curtains hiding her labor. Just maps and correspondence, and the kind of silence that comes from work done in her own name. She does not think about Alaric. She does not need to. She has already moved on. The years that follow are a slow education in humility. Alaric governs Ravarin with competence, but not brilliance. He learns to listen to advisors instead of simply using them. He learns to credit their work publicly, though it grates against every instinct he has. He learns that leadership without vision is just management, and he is, at best, a decent manager. The duchy does not collapse, but it does not expand either. It exists in a kind of stasis, functional but unremarkable, a mid-tier power in a region now dominated by alliances Seraphine helped broker. Alaric grows older. His hair grays at the temples. Lines appear around his eyes. He stops wearing the elaborate uniforms he once favored and dresses in simpler clothes, the kind a man wears when he is no longer performing for an audience. He never remarries. Lady Morel drifts away when it becomes clear that proximity to Alaric no longer offers the status it once did. Other women make offers. He declines them all. Not out of loyalty to Seraphine, but because the idea of possession now tastes like ash. On the anniversary of the treaty signing, Alaric rides alone to the neutral fields. He does not know why. Maybe to remember. Maybe to punish himself. Maybe because it is the last place he saw her as an equal instead of a tool. The plateau is empty. Wind moves across the pale stone, carrying dust and the memory of a conversation that ended everything. He stands where she stood and looks toward the horizon where the coastal protectorates lie. Somewhere out there, she is shaping the world with her mind fully unleashed, no longer constrained by a man who could not see past his own reflection. And Alaric is here, alone, diminished, honest for the first time in his life. He does not regret losing her because regret implies he ever had her. What he regrets is never seeing her until it was too late. The wind picks up. He turns and rides back to Ravarin, back to the citadel that feels less like a seat of power and more like a monument to lessons learned the hard way. Duke Alaric Voss will never be great, but he will be real. And in the end, that is the only dominance that matters, not over others, over yourself. The story does not end with redemption. It ends with recognition that the empire he built was never his, that the woman he possessed was never owned, that power, real power, is not taken or performed or imposed. It is earned, built brick by invisible brick by people willing to do the work without applause. And when those people leave, the facade crumbles. Alaric knows that now. He just wishes he had learned it when it could have mattered. Psych. Point of no return. 3 years after the treaty, a messenger arrives at Ravarin bearing an invitation. It is written on expensive paper, sealed with the crest of the coastal protectorates. Alaric opens it in the privacy of his study. Inside, an invitation to a summit, a gathering of regional powers to discuss a new economic alliance. The kind of event that will shape the next decade of politics and trade. At the bottom, in handwriting he would recognize in his sleep, a single line. Your presence is requested, not required. It is signed simply. Seraphine. Alaric stares at the invitation for a long time. This is not reconciliation. It is not forgiveness. It is something colder. A recognition that he still exists in her world, but only as a peripheral player. A minor duke invited to a table where the real architects sit. He could refuse, stay in Revarin, maintain his dignity by absence, or he could go. Face her across a negotiating table as an equal, if such a thing is even possible now. See what she has become without him. See what he has become without her. The choice sits in front of him like a door he cannot close. And for the first time in years, Alaric does not know which version of himself will walk through it. Alaric holds the invitation for 3 days before deciding. The paper grows soft from handling, creased at the edges where his thumbs press too hard. He reads that single line over and over until the words lose meaning and become just shapes, ink on expensive stock, a cipher he cannot decode. Your presence is requested, not required. The distinction is everything. Required would mean she needs him. Requested means she is offering him a chance to be relevant again. And the gap between those two states is the entire distance he has fallen. He decides to go not because he wants reconciliation, but because refusing would be admitting that he is afraid of her. And Alaric Voss has built what remains of his identity on the fiction that he fears nothing, even when that fiction is transparent enough to see through. Lord Gren opposes the journey with every argument he can muster. The summit is hostile territory. The coastal protectorates will use it to humiliate Revarin further. Seraphine herself might have orchestrated the entire event as a final public dismantling of Alaric's credibility. Gren lays out scenarios like a general mapping enemy positions, each one a variation on the same theme. This is a trap. Alaric listens to all of it, then overrides every objection with a single sentence. I'm going because I need to see what I lost. Gren does not argue after that. Some truths are too raw to debate. The journey to the coastal protectorates takes a week by ship, cutting across waters that turn from slate gray to deep blue as they move south. Alaric spends most of the voyage on deck, watching the horizon and thinking about the architecture of power, how it is built, how it crumbles, how men like him mistake the scaffolding for the structure and never realize their error until everything collapses. He thinks about his father, who ruled through intimidation and died choking on wine that should have been tested. He thinks about the 12 nobles he executed in response, how the court fell silent for months afterward, how he mistook that silence for respect instead of terror. He thinks about Seraphine sitting in rooms he controlled, watching him perform authority she scripted, saying nothing because speaking would have cost her everything. Power is a performance until someone stops writing the script. That was the opening of his own story, the hook that pulled him into this free fall. Now he is living the aftermath. The performance has ended, the audience has left, and he is standing alone on a stage built by someone else, wondering what comes next. The coastal protectorates rise from the water like a fever dream of marble and glass. White buildings cascade down hillsides toward harbors crowded with ships from a dozen nations. Trade is the lifeblood here, negotiation the currency. Unlike Revarin's black stone and iron discipline, this place pulses with color and noise and the kind of chaos that comes from people believing they have options. Alaric docks at the main port and is met by an escort. Not soldiers, diplomats. 2 men in tailored clothes who greet him with professional courtesy and zero warmth. They guide him through streets that smell like salt and spices and wealth, past markets where merchants shout in 4 languages, toward the summit hall perched on the highest hill overlooking the city. The building is architectural ambition made real. Glass dome, marble columns, gardens that spill green life across terraces like water flowing upward. It is designed to make visitors feel small. It succeeds. Inside, the main chamber is already filled with delegates from across the region. Alaric recognizes faces. The Iron Republic sent their trade minister, a severe woman named Kyle, who once told Alaric to his face that his tariff proposals were economically illiterate. The steppe sent a military advisor Alaric remembers from border negotiations 3 years ago. Representatives from minor duchies and city-states cluster in groups, their conversations low and strategic, And at the center of it all, seated at the head table with a stack of documents in front of her and a confidence that fills the room like smoke, is Seraphine. She has changed, not physically. She looks the same as the day she left, sharp-eyed and composed, her dark hair pulled back to reveal a face that gives nothing away. But the context has shifted so completely that she might as well be a different person. Here, she is not a shadow. She is the sun everything orbits. Their eyes meet across the chamber. Hers are neutral, assessing. The look you give a stranger, you are deciding whether to engage. Alaric feels the distance between them like a physical wound. She stands, and the room quiets instantly. Not because she demands silence, because people want to hear what she has to say. Welcome. Thank you all for attending. This summit represents an opportunity to reshape regional trade and security in ways that benefit everyone. The goal is collaboration, not domination. Mutual prosperity, not zero-sum competition. Her voice carries without effort. Clear, authoritative. Every word chosen with the precision Alaric remembers from late nights when she would draft strategies he would present as his own. Except now she is presenting them herself. And the room listens. She outlines the agenda. Economic integration. Shared security protocols. Dispute resolution frameworks. It is ambitious and practical in equal measure. The kind of vision that requires seeing 10 moves ahead. Alaric recognizes her fingerprints on every proposal. This is what she was always capable of when no one was standing in front of her taking credit. When she finishes, she invites questions. Delegates raise hands. She fields them with ease, turning challenges into dialogue, deflecting criticism without dismissing it. She is a master at work, and everyone in the room knows it. Alaric sits in silence. He has nothing to contribute. His expertise was always borrowed. Without her feeding him lines, he is just another minor duke watching the real players negotiate. The session breaks for the evening. Delegates scatter to private meetings and dinners. Alaric lingers, unsure where he fits in this ecosystem. He is about to leave when a voice stops him. Duke Voss. He turns. Seraphine is standing 5 feet away, documents tucked under one arm, her expression unreadable. A word if you have time. It is phrased as a request, but the power dynamic is clear. She is granting him an audience. They walk to a private terrace overlooking the harbor. The sun is setting, painting the water in shades of gold and blood. Seraphine leans against the railing, her gaze on the ships below. You came. You invited me. I did not think you would. Alaric joins her at the railing, keeping distance between them. Why did you? She considers the question, then answers with the same directness that used to unnerve him. Because I wanted to see if you had changed. If the man who treated me like a possession had learned anything from losing everything. And? She turns to face him fully. Her eyes are not cruel, just honest. You are quieter, less certain. That is progress. But you are still here trying to figure out how to get back what you lost instead of building something new. So no, you have not changed enough. The assessment lands like a fist. Alaric absorbs it without flinching. What would be enough? Accepting that you were never entitled to me, to my work, to my silence. Understanding that what you called partnership was extraction. Recognizing that the empire you mourned was never yours to begin with. She says it without anger, just fact. A surgeon describing a tumor she has already removed. I do understand that now. Do you? Or do you just understand that saying it is what I want to hear? Alaric does not have an answer. The silence stretches. Seraphine sighs, the first crack in her composure. I did not bring you here to punish you, Alaric. I brought you here because despite everything, I wanted to believe you were capable of growth. That the man who once had flashes of intelligence buried under ego and entitlement might surface if the performance was stripped away. She pauses, searching his face for something she does not find. But I see now that I was wrong. You are not here to learn. You are here because you cannot let go. She steps back, the distance between them widening into a chasm. Enjoy the summit. Observe. Take notes. Maybe you will learn something useful for Ravarin, but do not mistake this for reconciliation. We are not rebuilding anything. I have already built something better without you. She leaves before he can respond. Alaric stands alone on the terrace, the sunset fading into dusk, and feels the last thread of hope he did not know he was holding finally snap. The summit continues for 3 days. Alaric attends every session, sits in the back, and watches Seraphine orchestrate agreements that will reshape the region for the next decade. She is brilliant. She is ruthless when necessary and diplomatic when useful. She is everything he always knew she was and never allowed the world to see. On the second day, he notices something, a pattern in how delegates interact with her. Deference, yes. Respect, absolutely. But also something else. Familiarity, inside jokes, shared references, the kind of intimacy that comes from working closely together over time. She has built a team, advisors who treat her as an equal, strategists who challenge her ideas and are not punished for it, a network of people who see her and value her and would follow her into hell because she has earned that loyalty. Alaric recognizes what he has seen because it is what he never created. He demanded obedience. She inspired collaboration. He ruled through fear. She leads through competence. The realization should humble him. Instead, it makes him angry. Not at her, at himself. For being so blind. For wasting years extracting value from someone instead of building something with them. For believing that dominance was the same as leadership. On the third day, Lord Gren arrives unannounced. He finds Alaric in his quarters and delivers news with the grim efficiency of a man reporting casualties. Your Grace, we have a problem. Alaric looks up from documents he has been pretending to read. What now? Gren closes the door, ensuring privacy. Lady Morel has been meeting with representatives from the Iron Republics. In secret. For months. Alaric's blood goes cold. Explain. Gren produces letters, intercepted correspondence that detail a conspiracy so brazen it feels like satire. Morel, the woman Alaric once paraded beside him to humiliate Seraphine, has been feeding intelligence to the Iron Republics. Troop movements, supply routes, weaknesses in Rivaren's defenses. Everything she learned from proximity to the Duke she sold to his enemies. The betrayal is not even sophisticated, just opportunistic. Morel saw a man losing power and decided to hedge her bets by aligning with those who might replace him. Alaric reads the letters twice, his hands shaking with rage so pure it feels clarifying. How long have you known? Gren hesitates. 2 weeks. I wanted confirmation before bringing it to you. 2 weeks. Alaric's voice is a blade. You let me come here, humiliate myself in front of Seraphine and half the region while this rot was spreading in my own court? Gren does not flinch. I needed evidence. Suspicion is not enough. Now we have it. The question is what you do with it. Alaric stands pacing the room like a caged animal. Where is she now? Still in Ravaren? She does not know we are aware. Good. Send word. Arrest her. Seize her assets. I want a full accounting of everyone she has been in contact with. If there are others, Your Grace. Gren's tone stops him. This is not just about Morel. This is about what her betrayal reveals. Your court is unstable. Nobles are looking for exits. They see Ravaren diminishing and are making contingency plans. Morel is a symptom, not the disease. Alaric turns on him, fury barely contained. Then what do you suggest? That I let traitors operate freely because punishing them would reveal weakness? I suggest you recognize that ruling through fear no longer works. Fear requires power. And you no longer have enough of it to make people more afraid of you than they are of your enemies. The truth of it hits harder than any blow Alaric has ever taken. Gren is right. Ravaren is not held together by loyalty or belief or shared purpose. It is held together by the rapidly decaying memory of Alaric's former dominance. And memories are not foundations. They are fantasies. Alaric sinks into a chair, the fight draining out of him. What would you do? Gren considers, then speaks with the bluntness of a man who has nothing left to lose. I would stop trying to be the Duke you were and become the Duke Ravaren needs. Stop demanding obedience and start earning collaboration. Stop hoarding power and start distributing it to people competent enough to use it. Stop trying to control everything and start building something that can survive without you. He pauses. In short, Your Grace, I would do what Seraphine did. Stop being the performance and start being the architect. The words settle over Alaric like a shroud. And if I cannot, then Ravaren will fall, and you will fall with it. That night, Alaric does something he has not done in years. He seeks out Seraphine, not to argue, not to plead, but to ask for help. He finds her in a study adjacent to the main summit hall, working late as she always did. The room is lined with books and maps, lit by lamps that cast everything in warm amber. She looks up when he enters, her expression shifting from surprise to guarded neutrality. Alaric? Seraphine. He closes the door behind him, suddenly aware of how pathetic this must look. The dethroned duke crawling back to the woman he discarded. I need advice. She sets down her pen, folding her hands in front of her. On what? How to stop an empire from collapsing when everyone inside it is looking for the exits. Seraphine's eyes narrow. She gestures to a chair across from her desk. Alaric sits. Tell me, he explains. Morella's betrayal. The unstable court. The reality that Ravarin is held together by momentum rather than structure. He lays it out with the honesty of a man who has nothing left to protect. When he finishes, Seraphine is silent for a long moment. Then she speaks with the clinical precision he remembers. Your problem is not Morel. Your problem is that you built a system where betrayal is rational. You ruled through fear and extraction. People stayed because leaving was dangerous. Now that you are weaker, leaving is less dangerous than staying. So they are leaving. What do I do? She leans back, studying him like a puzzle she is deciding whether to solve. You stop trying to rule the way you always have. You acknowledge that the old model is dead. You bring people into decision-making who have actual expertise. You give them credit. You make them stakeholders instead of subjects. You become a facilitator instead of a dictator. Alaric absorbs this, his mind racing. And if I do that, Ravarin survives? Maybe. Maybe not. But it has a chance. The alternative is certain collapse. She stands, moving to the window overlooking the city below. The hard part is not the strategy, Alaric. The hard part is accepting that implementing it means you will never be the center of power again. You will be one voice among many. Important, perhaps, but not dominant. Can you live with that? Alaric does not answer immediately. The question strikes at the core of his identity. Everything he was raised to be. Everything he believed made him worthy of the title. I do not know. Seraphine turns to face him, her expression softening slightly. Then figure it out. Because the version of you that needs to dominate cannot save Ravarin. Only the version that can collaborate has a chance. She crosses to the door, opening it in a clear dismissal. Good luck, Alaric. I mean that. He stands, hesitates at the threshold. Did you ever think we could have been partners? Real partners? Seraphine meets his gaze, and for a moment, something almost like sadness crosses her face. Every day for the first 2 years. Then I stopped wasting time on impossibilities. She closes the door between them, and Alaric is alone again. He returns to Ravarin the next morning, cutting the summit short. The journey back is a blur of sleepless nights and circular thoughts. When he arrives, he summons the entire court to the grand hall. Nobles, military advisors, merchants, administrators. Everyone who has a stake in the duchy's future. They gather warily, expecting another purge, another display of dominance. Instead, Alaric does something none of them anticipate. He tells the truth. Ravarin is failing, not because of external enemies, because of internal rot, because I built a system that rewarded obedience over competence, because I took credit for work I did not do, and punished people for questioning decisions that were wrong, because I ruled like a tyrant and called it strength. The hall is silent, shocked. That ends now. I am forming a council. Representatives from military, trade, agriculture, intelligence. People who know their fields better than I do. They will have real authority, real input. I will listen. I will defer to expertise, and I will share credit. He pauses, letting it sink in. This is not weakness. This is survival. Any of you who cannot accept that are free to leave. I will not stop you. But those who stay will help me build something sustainable instead of watching me perform dominance until we all starve. No one moves. The silence stretches. Then Lord Gren steps forward. I will stay. Others follow. Slowly. Hesitantly. But they follow. Not everyone. Some nobles leave that night, seeking better prospects elsewhere. Alaric lets them go without punishment. It is the first test of his new philosophy, and it feels like tearing off his own skin. But Ravarin does not collapse. It stumbles. It struggles. But it does not fall. Over the next months, the council takes shape. Decisions are debated instead of dictated. Mistakes are made, but they are corrected through discussion rather than executions. The duchy begins to stabilize not because Alaric is brilliant, but because he has surrounded himself with people who are. It is humbling, exhausting, and nothing like the power he once wielded. But it works. A year after the summit, Alaric receives another letter from Seraphine. This time, it is not an invitation. It is a report. She has brokered a trade agreement between the coastal protectorates and 3 neighboring states, creating an economic bloc that will dominate the region for decades. At the bottom, a handwritten note. I heard about your council. It is a start. Keep going. No signature. She does not need one. Alaric reads it at his desk, the same desk where he once sat and took credit for her work. The irony is not lost on him. He writes back, a short letter acknowledging her success and thanking her for the advice that saved Raverin. He does not ask for reconciliation, does not plead, just acknowledges the debt. He sends it and does not expect a response. 3 weeks later, one arrives. You are learning, slowly, but learning. That is more than I expected. Good luck, Alaric. You're going to need it. It is the closest thing to forgiveness he will ever get, and it is enough. 2 years after the summit, Duke Alaric Voss stands in the war room surrounded by council members debating a trade dispute with the Iron Republics. The conversation is heated, voices overlapping, opinions clashing. Alaric listens more than he speaks. When he does offer input, it is questioned, challenged, and sometimes overruled. He does not rage, does not demand obedience. He listens to the counter-arguments, adjusts his position when the logic is sound, and moves forward. It is not the power you once had. It is something smaller, harder, more honest. And for the first time in his life, Alaric Voss feels like he might actually be leading instead of performing. The performance is over. The audience has left. But the work remains. And the man doing it is finally real. The Crucible. Late one night, long after the council has dispersed and the citadel has gone silent, Alaric receives an urgent message. Lord Gren enters his study without knocking, his face gray with exhaustion and something worse. Fear. Your Grace, we have intercepted communications from the Iron Republics. They are planning a military incursion into our northern territories. 3 battalions. They move in 2 weeks. Alaric sets down his pen, ice flooding his veins. Why now? Gren places decoded messages on the desk. Because they believe we are weak. Because our military has been reduced per the treaty terms. Because they think the council structure means we cannot respond quickly enough to mount an effective defense. Alaric scans the documents. The intelligence is solid. The threat is real. And the Iron Republics are right. Raverin's military capacity is a shadow of what it once was. A direct confrontation would be catastrophic. What are our options? Gren's silence is answer enough. Alaric stands, pacing to the window. The courtyard below is dark except for torches marking guard posts. He thinks about Seraphine, about how she would approach this. Not with brute force, with leverage. We need allies. Gren shakes his head. The coastal protectorates are neutral by treaty. The steppes will not intervene. We are isolated. Then we make ourselves unisolated. Summon the council. Now, all of them. Your Grace, it is past midnight. Now. Within an hour, bleary-eyed advisors fill the war room. Alaric lays out the situation without preamble. The Iron Republics are coming. Raverin cannot stop them alone. They need a solution in 14 days. The room erupts. Panic. Recriminations. Accusations that the treaty weakened them fatally. Alaric lets them vent, then cuts through the noise. Enough. We do not have time for blame. We need options. Talk. The military advisor speaks first. We could fortify the northern pass. Make it too costly to advance. Gren counters. With what troops? We barely have enough to defend the citadel if they breach the pass. The trade minister offers another angle. What if we offer economic concessions? Open trade routes they have wanted access to. Alaric considers it. That buys time at best. They want territory, not trade deals. Then the newest council member, a young woman named Alara, who oversees intelligence, speaks up. She joined the council 3 months ago, recommended by Gren for her analytical mind. What if we do not fight them at all? The room goes quiet. Alaric gestures for her to continue. The Iron Republics are moving because they believe we are weak and isolated. What if we prove them wrong? Not with military strength, with diplomatic unity. If we can demonstrate that attacking Ravarin means facing a coalition, they will recalculate. How do we build a coalition in 2 weeks? Alara pulls out documents she has clearly been working on in anticipation of this moment. By offering the coastal protectorate something they desperately need, access to our mining operations, rare minerals essential for their manufacturing sector. In exchange, they provide a security guarantee. The Iron Republics will not risk war with the protectorates. Alaric stares at her. Those mines are Ravarin's primary economic asset. Yes, and if the Iron Republics take the northern territories, we lose access to them anyway. The logic is airtight, brutal, and exactly what Seraphine would suggest. Alaric looks around the table. Every face is tense. This is the moment. The choice that will define whether the council structure works or collapses under real pressure. Vote. All in favor of the proposal. Hands rise, slowly, then faster. Not unanimous, but a clear majority. Alaric nods. Draft the terms. I will take them to the coastal protectorates myself. 3 days later, Alaric stands in the same summit hall where Seraphine humiliated him with honesty. This time, he is here as a supplicant. The irony is not lost on him. Lord Cadmus, the Duke of the Coastal Protectorates, receives him in a private chamber. Cadmus is a broad man with silver hair and eyes that miss nothing. He gestures to a chair. Duke Voss, twice in 2 years. I am starting to think you enjoy our hospitality. Alaric does not rise to the bait. I am here to propose a partnership. He lays out the offer. Mining rights in exchange for a security guarantee. The terms are generous. More generous than Ravarin can afford. But desperation is not a negotiating position. Cadmus reads the proposal, his expression unreadable. This is a significant concession. It is necessary. For you. What is in it for us beyond minerals? Alaric meets his gaze. Stability. The Iron Republics are aggressive. If they succeed in Ravarin, they will not stop there. Supporting us now prevents a larger conflict later. Cadmus leans back, considering. You make a compelling argument, but I do not negotiate with you. I negotiate with Lady Seraphine. She is my chief strategist. If she approves the terms, we proceed. The floor drops out from under Alaric. Of course, Cadmus summons her. She arrives within minutes, dressed in practical gray, her expression neutral until she sees Alaric. Then something flickers. Surprise, maybe. Alaric is proposing a partnership, Cadmus explains, handing her the documents. Seraphine reads in silence. The room waits. When she finishes, she sets the papers down and looks at Alaric. This is a good offer. Better than I expected from you. Then you will recommend acceptance? She tilts her head, studying him. That depends. Is this desperation, or have you actually changed the way you operate? Alaric chooses honesty. Both. We are desperate. But the offer was designed by my council, not me. I presented it. They built it. Seraphine's eyes narrow. Your council? Yes, the one you told me to create. She exchanges a glance with Cadmus, some silent communication passing between them. Then she nods. I will recommend acceptance, on one condition. Name it. You include a clause guaranteeing that council decisions are binding, that you cannot unilaterally override them. I want structural accountability, not just your word. Alaric absorbs the demand. It is a cage, a permanent limitation on his authority. It is also smart. Agreed. Seraphine stands, extending a hand. Then we have a deal. He shakes it. Her grip is firm, professional. The touch of an equal, not a subordinate. As she releases his hand, she speaks quietly enough that only he can hear. You are learning, Alaric. Keep going. Then she is gone, leaving him with Cadmus to finalize terms. Mskemt. The security guarantee is announced publicly within a week. The Iron Republics receive word that attacking Ravarin means facing the coastal protectorates. They withdraw their battalions. The crisis passes. Ravarin survives. Again. Not through dominance, through collaboration. Alaric returns home to a court that is cautiously optimistic. The council is validated. The system works. But the cost is real. Ravarin is smaller now, poorer, more dependent on allies. And Alaric is no longer the center of anything. He is a facilitator, a manager, a duke who listens more than he speaks and defers more than he commands. It is not the power he wanted, but it is the power that keeps people alive. Late one night, alone in his study, Alaric drafts another letter to Seraphine. He does not send it, just writes it to organize his thoughts. You were right about everything. I was a tyrant who mistook performance for substance. I extracted instead of building. I demanded instead of earning. And I lost everything because of it. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I want you to know that the man you left behind is not the man I am now. I am smaller, weaker in some ways, but more honest, more real. Thank you for breaking the illusion. It saved my life. Unraveling. He folds the letter and locks it in a drawer. Some truths are meant to be written, not sent. The transformation. Years pass. Unraveling stabilizes into something sustainable but unremarkable. The council governs effectively. The duchy maintains alliances, trade flows, people do not starve. Alaric ages into the role. His hair grays completely. Lines deepen around his eyes. He dresses simply now, the elaborate uniforms retired to storage. He is respected, not feared, not worshipped, but respected. It is enough. One evening, a courier delivers a package. Inside, a book, newly published. The title reads, Architectures of Power, Collaborative Governance in a Fractured Age. The author is listed as Lady Seraphine Hale. Alaric opens it. The dedication page stops his breath. To those who had the courage to dismantle what they built and start over. The work is harder. The glory is less, but the foundation is real. He reads the entire book in one sitting. It is brilliant, a treatise on governance that uses case studies from across the region. Unraveling is included, not as a failure, but as an example of successful transformation. She wrote about him, honestly, critically, but not cruelly. At the end of the book, a final note. Power is not a throne. It is not a title. It is not the ability to command silence or instill fear. Power is the capacity to build systems that function without you, to create structures that outlive your ego, to leave something better than you found it. That is the only dominance worth pursuing. Alaric closes the book and sits in silence. He will never be great. He will never be the legend he once performed, but he will be honest. And in a world built on illusions, honesty is its own form of power. The story does not end with redemption. It ends with transformation. Duke Alaric Voss learned to let go of the man he wanted to be and become the man his people needed, and in that surrender he found something he never had when he ruled through fear. Peace. Peace is a fragile thing built on agreements between people who remember war. It lasts only as long as memory outweighs ambition. And in the northern territories where borders blur and old grudges run deeper than rivers, memory is always the first casualty. 3 years after the security guarantee saves Unraveling from invasion, the Iron Republics make a different calculation. Not open war, something quieter, more corrosive. They begin funding insurgents in the disputed mountain passes, arming separatist groups with weapons and ideology, turning villages that once paid taxes to Unraveling into fortified camps loyal to foreign powers. It is not an invasion, it is an infection. The reports reach Alaric's council in fragments. A patrol ambushed, a supply convoy burned, a magistrate found dead with a message carved into his chest. The Iron Republics deny involvement. Their ambassadors speak of local unrest and political instability, their voices smooth as oil on water. But the weapons recovered from insurgent camps tell a different story. Republic steel, Republic gunpowder, Republic training. The council debates for weeks. Some argue for military response. Others push for diplomatic pressure through the coastal protectorates. The trade minister suggests economic sanctions. Every option is analyzed, dissected, war-gamed, until the arguments blur into static. Alaric listens. He has learned to listen, but listening does not solve the problem. And the problem is metastasizing. During a late-night session, Alara presents intelligence that changes everything. She spreads maps across the table, marking locations with red pins that cluster like a rash. The insurgents are not random. They are coordinated. Supply lines run from Republic territory through 3 key passes. If we cut those passes, we cut their ability to sustain the insurgency. Gren studies the map, his face grim. Cutting the passes means deploying troops into disputed territory. The Republics will call it an act of aggression. Alara does not back down. They are already committing aggression. We are just refusing to name it. The room falls silent. The logic is sound. The risk is enormous. Alaric speaks for the first time in an hour. If we do this, we need to do it fast and completely. No half measures. We seal the passes, cut the supply lines, and force the republics to either escalate openly or abandon the insurgents. And if they escalate? Gren's question hangs heavy. Then we find out if our allies honor their commitments. The vote is close. 4 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstention. It passes. Alaric looks around the table at faces marked by exhaustion and doubt. Prepare the troops. We move in 72 hours. As the council disperses, Gren lingers. Your Grace, this is the most aggressive action Ravorin has taken since the treaty. If it goes wrong, then it goes wrong. But doing nothing guarantees we lose the north. At least this way we fight. Gren nods slowly. You have changed. The old you would have made this decision alone and blamed everyone else if it failed. This version shares the burden. Alaric meets his eyes. This version knows that shared decisions mean shared accountability. If we fail together. It is a philosophy born from loss and humility, and it is about to be tested in blood. The operation is named Severance. 4 battalions move under cover of darkness toward the 3 mountain passes that serve as arteries for Republic supplies. The plan is surgical. Seal the passes with explosives. Establish defensive positions. Force the insurgents to either surrender or starve. Alaric does not lead the assault. He is not a soldier, but he travels with the command unit, positioned at a forward camp 5 miles from the nearest pass. It is closer than Gren recommends and farther than Alaric wants. A compromise that satisfies no one. The night before the operation launches, Alaric stands outside his tent, watching soldiers prepare. They move with practiced efficiency, checking weapons, redistributing supplies, writing letters they hope they will not need to send. These are not the fearful conscripts of his father's era. They are professionals who chose to serve because the council gave them reason to believe in something beyond survival. A young officer approaches, saluting sharply. Your Grace, final briefing in 10 minutes. Alaric nods. As the officer turns to leave, Alaric stops him. What is your name? The officer blinks, surprised. Corporal Tomas, Your Grace. Where are you from, Tomas? A village near the eastern border. Milford. Alaric recognizes the name, a farming community that contributes grain to the duchy's reserves. Your family still there? Yes, Your Grace, my mother and 2 sisters. Alaric places a hand on the young man's shoulder. Then we make sure you get back to them. Understood? Understood, Your Grace. The exchange is brief, inconsequential in the scope of war. But it matters to Alaric because it reminds him that every decision he makes is written in other people's lives. That power is not about dominating a room. It is about honoring the people who trust you enough to follow orders into darkness. The old Alaric never learned their names. This one does. Severance launches at dawn. Explosives tear through mountain rock with sounds like the world splitting open. The passes collapse in cascades of stone and dust. Sealing supply routes the republics have used for months. Defensive positions are established within hours. The operation is textbook for the first 12 hours. Then everything goes wrong. The insurgents do not retreat. They attack. Not in scattered skirmishes, but in coordinated assaults across all 3 positions simultaneously. They come in waves, armed better than intelligence predicted, organized like professional soldiers rather than guerrilla fighters. The Ravorin troops hold, but barely. Casualties mount. Ammunition runs low. And then the Republic military crosses the border. Not insurgents, not proxies. 3 full battalions bearing the Republic flag, moving with the confidence of a force that has already decided the international response will be slow enough to ignore. The message is clear. The republics are done pretending. This is war. Alaric receives the reports in the command tent, each one worse than the last. Gren is shouting orders into a communication relay. Alara is updating maps with enemy positions that multiply faster than they can be countered. The air smells like smoke and sweat and the sharp acid of fear. We need to pull back. One of the field commanders argues over the radio. We are outnumbered 3-1 at the northern pass. If we stay, we lose the entire unit. Gren looks to Alaric. The decision is his to make. Every instinct Alaric has Every reflex built over years of ruling through dominance screams at him to double down, to refuse retreat, to demand his soldiers hold the line because yielding is weakness. But he has learned that strength is not the same as stubbornness, and sometimes the hardest decision is knowing when to let go. Pull them back, consolidate at the southern positions. We hold what we can and abandon what we cannot. The order goes out. Troops retreat under covering fire, leaving 2 of the 3 passes to Republic forces. It is a tactical withdrawal. It is also a public defeat. Within hours, Republic propaganda is broadcasting the victory. Reverin forces routed. Duke Voss's gamble exposed as incompetence. The narrative spreads faster than Alaric can counter it. Gren slams a fist on the table. They planned this. They wanted us to act so they could justify open intervention. Alaric stares at the maps, watching red enemy markers swallow territory he tried to defend. Then we gave them what they wanted. The words taste like ash. But there is no time for recrimination. Because the Republic advance is not stopping. They are pushing south, driving toward Revarin's agricultural heartland. If they take that, the duchy starves. Alaric turns to Alara. Contact the coastal protectorates. Invoke the security guarantee. We need their intervention now. Alara's face goes pale. Your Grace, the guarantee specifies response to direct invasion of Revarin territory. The passes are disputed land. The protectorates may argue this does not trigger, then make them argue faster. Send the request. Mark it urgent. As Alara rushes to the communication station, Gren moves closer, lowering his voice. If the protectorates refuse, we are alone against 3 Republic battalions. We cannot win that fight. I know. Then what do we do? Alaric looks at him, and for the first time in 3 years, the old steel returns to his voice. We make them pay for every mile. Hoak. The message to the coastal protectorates is sent through encrypted channels. It reaches Lord Cadmus within the hour. His response comes back 6 hours later. 6 hours of watching Republic forces advance. 6 hours of casualties mounting. 6 hours of Revarin bleeding. When the response finally arrives, Alaric reads it alone in his tent. His hands shake. The coastal protectorates recognize the gravity of the situation. However, the security guarantee applies to internationally recognized Revarin territory. The disputed passes do not qualify. We are willing to mediate negotiations but cannot commit military forces at this time. It is a refusal wrapped in diplomatic language. Polite, legally defensible, and utterly devastating. Alaric crumples the message, then smooths it out again. There is a second page, a private note. The council overruled military intervention. The vote was close. I argued in your favor. Seraphine abstained. I am sorry. Cadmus. Seraphine abstained. The woman who once built his empire now refuses to save it. The irony is so sharp it draws blood. Alaric exits the tent and finds Gren coordinating defensive positions. The protectorates declined. Gren's face hardens. Then we fight alone. No. Gren stops, confusion flickering across his features. Your Grace. Alaric's mind is moving at the speed it used to when Seraphine fed him strategies. But this time, the thinking is his own. We cannot win a military engagement, but we can win a political one. The Republics are beating that the international community will not intervene in a border dispute. But if we force them to commit atrocities, if we make their aggression so visible that neutrality becomes complicity, we change the equation. How do we do that? Alaric looks towards the southern pass where Revarin troops are digging in. We make them destroy something they cannot justify destroying. Asakt. The plan is brutal in its simplicity. Revarin forces will establish a defensive line at the village of Milford, Corporal Thomas's home. It is a civilian population, farms, families, no military value. If the Republics attack, they are not engaging enemy combatants. They are massacring civilians. Gren is horrified. Your Grace, you're using civilians as shields. I am using geography as a statement. The troops will be there to defend the village, not hide behind it. But if the Republics want to advance, they will have to go through a populated area, and the world will watch. What if they do not care? What if they attack anyway? Then we document it. Every moment, every casualty. And we make sure the coastal protectorates and every other neutral power sees exactly what their neutrality enables. It is ruthless. It is cynical. And it is the only card Alaric has left to play. The order goes out. Troops move to Milford and begin fortifying positions around the village. Engineers set up observation posts equipped with visual recording equipment. Runners are positioned to carry documentation to neutral observers if communication lines are cut. The villagers are given a choice: evacuate or stay. Most choose to stay. Not out of bravery, but because leaving means abandoning everything they have built: their homes, their land, their lives. Corporal Thomas finds Alaric at the command post. "Your Grace, my family is in that village." "I know." The young man's jaw tightens. "If the Republics attack, they might. And if they do, your family will be in danger. I cannot promise their safety. What I can promise is that if they are harmed, the world will know, and the people responsible will answer for it." Tomas nods slowly. "Then I'm going to the village, to be with them." Alaric wants to order him to stay, to keep him safe, but that would make Tomas just another piece on a board. And Alaric is done treating people like game pieces. "Go, and come back alive." Tomas salutes and leaves. Gren watches the exchange, his expression unreadable. "You are betting everything on the assumption that the Republics care about international opinion." Alaric stares at the maps. "I am betting on the assumption that someone does, and that someone has more power than we do. It is a prayer disguised as strategy, and Alaric stopped believing in prayers a long time ago, but he has nothing else left." The Republic forces reach Milford at dusk 2 days later. 3 battalions arrayed in formation, artillery positioned on the hills overlooking the village. They do not attack immediately. They wait, calculating, assessing. A Republic officer rides forward under a white flag. Alaric meets him at the village edge, flanked by Gren and 2 guards. The officer is young, polished, his uniform immaculate. He speaks with the rehearsed authority of someone delivering a message crafted by committee. "Duke Voss, you are ordered to withdraw your forces immediately. This territory is under Republic jurisdiction. Failure to comply will result in military action." Alaric does not blink. "This is Ravaran territory, inhabited by Ravaran citizens. Your presence here is an invasion. The passes you destroyed were vital infrastructure. You committed the first act of aggression. The passes you were using to arm insurgents who murdered Ravaran officials." The officer's smile is thin. "Disputed claims. What is not disputed is that you have placed military forces in a civilian area using non-combatants as shields. That is a violation of the Accords of Warfare." Alaric steps closer, his voice dropping to something cold and sharp. "Tell your commanders this. If they fire 1 shell into this village, if they harm 1 civilian, I will make sure every neutral observer, every allied nation, every journalist in this region knows exactly what the Iron Republics are willing to do for a few miles of rock and dirt." The officer does not flinch. "Then we understand each other. You have 6 hours to withdraw. After that, we advance. What happens to the village is your responsibility." He turns and rides back to Republic lines. Gren exhales slowly. 6 hours. Alaric watches the enemy battalions settle into position. Then we use them. The next 6 hours are chaos contained in slow motion. Alaric sends runners to every neutral observer within a day's ride. Coastal Protectorate liaisons, steppes monitors, even merchants from independent city-states who have no stake in the conflict but might care about the precedent being set. The message is identical. Come to Milford. Witness what happens when aggression is allowed to proceed unchallenged. Some come. Not many, but enough. Alaric also sends a personal message, encrypted, addressed to Seraphine Hale. "You abstained when the council voted on intervention. I understand why. This is not your fight. But it is about to become a massacre. If you ever believe that power carries responsibility, now is when you prove it. Come to Milford, bear witness. Or live with the knowledge that you could have stopped this and chose neutrality instead." He does not know if she will come. Does not know if the message will even reach her in time. But he sends it anyway. Because the man he used to be would have demanded her help. The man he is now can only ask. As the deadline approaches, Alaric walks through Milford. The village is small. Maybe 200 people, farmers mostly. A few artisans. Children playing in streets who do not understand that their homes are about to become a battlefield. He finds Corporal Tomas with his family. The young man is holding his youngest sister, maybe 6 years old, while his mother watches with the resigned calm of someone who has survived too much to panic. Your Grace, Tomas's mother bows. Alaric stops her. No, I should be bowing to you. You are staying because I asked you to, because I turned your home into a strategy. She studies him with eyes that have seen leaders come and go. You are staying too. That means something. It means I do not ask people to risk what I will not risk myself. She nods. Then we will see this through together. The simplicity of her courage humbles him more than any speech ever could. The 6 hours expire. The Republic artillery positions elevate their barrels. Alaric stands in the village square, surrounded by Ravaran soldiers and civilians who refuse to leave. Gren is beside him. Alara coordinates observers positioned on the surrounding hills. Everything is ready. Everything except the certainty that this will work. A Republic officer raises a flag, the signal to commence bombardment. Alaric's heart hammers against his ribs. His hands are steady, but only because he forces them to be. Every instinct screams to run, to pull his troops out, to save what can be saved. But running now means abandoning these people. And the man he has become cannot do that. The flag drops, artillery barrels thunder, shells arc through the sky, and then a voice cuts through the chaos, amplified, commanding, hold fire. The shells explode harmlessly in the fields beyond the village. Alaric spins toward the source of the voice. A rider is approaching from the west at full gallop. Behind her, a column of coastal protectorate cavalry, their banners unmistakable even at a distance. The rider pulls up at the village edge, dismounts with practiced efficiency, and walks toward Alaric with the kind of authority that bends battlefields. Seraphine. She looks exactly as he remembers and completely different. Battle gear instead of diplomatic robes. Dust on her face, eyes sharp as broken glass. She stops 10 feet from him, addressing the Republic forces in a voice that carries across the valley. The coastal protectorates invoke the security guarantee. Any attack on this village is an attack on our allied territory. Stand down or face immediate military response. The Republic forces hesitate. Their commander rides forward, fury etched into every line of his face. You have no authority here. The council voted against intervention. Seraphine's smile is cold enough to freeze blood. The council voted against intervention in disputed territory. This is not disputed. This is a civilian village under Ravaran protection, and as of 10 minutes ago, under protectorate protection as well. You want this land? You go through us first, she gestures. The protectorate cavalry spreads into formation, not enough to win a full engagement, but enough to make the cost unacceptable. The Republic commander stares at her, at Alaric, at the observers documenting every moment. Then he makes the calculation every aggressor eventually makes. Is this worth the price? The answer is no. He orders the withdrawal, slowly, with all the dignity a retreating force can muster, but they withdraw. The village is saved. When the Republic forces disappear over the horizon, the villagers erupt in relief. Soldiers embrace, children cry. Tomas's mother crosses to Alaric and takes his hand. Thank you. He does not know what to say. Thank you feels inadequate for people who just bet their lives on his judgment. Seraphine approaches, her cavalry dispersing to secure the perimeter. Alaric. Seraphine. They stand in the wreckage of almost war, two people who built and destroyed and rebuilt around each other, and for a moment neither speaks. Then Alaric breaks the silence. You came. You asked. Her voice is neutral, but something in her eyes suggests the decision was not easy. The council voted against intervention. I overrode them. Cadmus backed me. Barely. But he backed me. Why? She looks at the village, at the people slowly realizing they will not die today. Because you were right. Neutrality in the face of atrocity is complicity. And because the message you sent reminded me that power without responsibility is just cruelty in a different uniform. She meets his gaze. You have changed, Alaric. The man who ruled Ravaran 3 years ago would have used this village as a shield and felt nothing. You used it as a statement and it is tearing you apart. I can see it. Is that growth or just a different kind of weakness? It is humanity, which is harder than dominance ever was. They stand in silence again. The distance between them is 3 feet and 1,000 miles. Finally, Seraphine speaks. The protectorates will maintain a presence here until a treaty is formalized. The republics will not risk another confrontation now that international forces are involved. You won, Alaric, but not the way you used to win. What way is that? By making people care more about the outcome than their own survival. She turns to leave, then pauses. I abstained because I did not believe you would risk everything for people who cannot repay you. I was wrong, and I'm glad I was wrong. She walks away before he can respond, and Alaric is left standing in a village that almost became a graveyard, surrounded by people who lived because he finally learned that power is not about domination. It is about knowing what is worth dying for. The summons. 2 weeks later, after treaties are signed and borders redrawn and the republics withdraw under international pressure, Alaric receives a message. Not through official channels, a private courier. The seal is Seraphine's. Inside, a single sentence. Meet me at the neutral fields. Alone. Tomorrow at dawn. No explanation. No context. Alaric reads it 3 times, searching for subtext he cannot find. Gran advises against going. It could be a trap. It could be a setup. It could be anything. But Alaric goes anyway. Because the woman who saved his duchy, when she had every reason to let it fall, has asked to see him. And whatever she wants to say, he owes her the courtesy of listening. He rides through the night, reaching the plateau as the first light breaks over the eastern ridge. The stone glitters with morning dew, turning the barren ground into something almost beautiful. Seraphine is already there, waiting on the same black mare. Dressed not for war, but for travel. She dismounts as he approaches. They stand facing each other, the sun rising behind her, turning her silhouette into a figure carved from light and shadow. Alaric speaks first. Why did you really come to Milford? Seraphine takes a breath, and for the first time since he has known her, she looks uncertain. Because I needed to know if the man I left was capable of becoming someone worth saving. And you are. Barely. But you are. She steps closer. I spent 3 years building something without you. A system. A network. Power that is mine and no one else's. And it is everything I wanted. Except it is lonely. Because the people around me respect my competence. But they do not know me. Not the way you did. Not the way you could have if you had ever stopped performing long enough to see me. Alaric's throat tightens. I see you now. I know. That is why I am here. That is why. She reaches into her saddlebag and produces a document, unfolds it between them. The coastal protectorates are formalizing a permanent alliance structure. A council of nations, shared defense, economic integration, the foundation of something larger than any single duchy or republic. She hands him the document. Reverin is invited to join, not as a subject state, as an equal partner. Your council structure impressed people. Your willingness to risk everything for civilians impressed more. You have credibility now. Use it. Alaric scans the terms. They are generous, more generous than Reverin deserves. What is the cost? She meets his eyes. You. Specifically, you serving as Raverin's representative on the Joint Council, which means working with me, directly, for years. The implication settles over him like a weight. You want me close. I want to see if we can build something together. As equals. No extraction, no performance. Just 2 people trying to create a system that outlives us both. And if I say no, then Raverin joins anyway and someone else represents you. But I think you will say yes. Because the man you are now understands that this is bigger than pride. Alaric looks at the document, at Seraphine, at the future unfolding in front of him like a road he cannot see the end of. I will need to consult my counsel. Seraphine smiles, the first real smile he has seen from her in years. Good. That is exactly what the old you would not have said. She mounts her horse. You have 1 week to decide. Send word to the protectorates. And Alaric? Yes? Try not to overthink it. Sometimes the right choice is just the one that scares you less than the alternative. She rides away, leaving him alone on the plateau with the decision that will define the rest of his life. Partnership. Equals. Building something that matters. It is everything he wanted when he did not know how to want it, and everything he is terrified of now that he does. Alaric stands in the rising sun, the document heavy in his hands, and realizes that the hardest battles are not fought on fields or in courts. They are fought in the quiet moments when you decide who you want to be, and whether you have the courage to become that person. The answer, he knows, will determine everything. The council chamber in Ravarin has changed. Gone are the towering throne and the elevated dais designed to make petitioners crane their necks in submission. In their place stands a round table, scarred oak that has witnessed 1,000 debates, surrounded by chairs of equal height. No head, no hierarchy of seating. Just a circle where voices carry the same weight regardless of who speaks them. Alaric sits among his advisors, the document from Seraphine spread before them like a map to territory none of them have traveled. Gren reads it for the third time, his weathered face creased with concentration. Alara studies the economic clauses with the focused intensity that made her invaluable. The trade minister calculates tariff implications. The military advisor assesses security commitments. They debate for hours, not in whispers designed to flatter the Duke, but in full-throated argument that treats his opinion as one among many. It is uncomfortable. It is inefficient. It is exactly what governance should be. Finally, Gren sets down the document and looks at Alaric. This is more than a trade agreement. This is integration. We would be binding Ravarin's future to a coalition we do not control. Alaric nods slowly. We would also be binding ourselves to a structure that prevents any single power from acting unilaterally, including us. Alara leans forward. The economic benefits are substantial. Access to protectorate markets, shared infrastructure costs, mutual defense, without maintaining a standing army that bankrupts us. The military advisor counters, mutual defense also means mutual obligation. If the protectorates go to war, we go with them. Then we ensure the council structure prevents unnecessary wars. Alaric's voice cuts through the debate. The question is not whether this has risks. Everything has risks. The question is whether we trust ourselves to navigate those risks better alone or with allies who share our interests. The room falls quiet. It is the kind of silence that comes before decisions that cannot be unmade. Gren speaks first. I trust your judgment, Your Grace. If you believe this is right, I will support it. Others nod. Not unanimous, but consensus. Alaric looks around the table at faces marked by the same exhaustion and hope he feels. Then we agree. Ravarin joins the coalition, and I serve as our representative. The vote is formalized. Documents are signed. And Alaric commits himself to a future that terrifies and exhilarates him in equal measure. Because serving on a council with Seraphine means confronting everything they were and deciding what they might become. There is no script for that. No performance that will carry him through. Just the raw honesty of two people trying to build something without the illusions that destroyed them the first time. The Joint Council convenes for the first time in the Coastal Protectorate's capital, in a hall designed for collaboration rather than domination. Delegates from 6 nations gather around a table large enough to seat 30, each representative bringing their own history of conflict and compromise. Alaric arrives early, his hands damp with nervousness he refuses to show. He has faced armies, survived coups, rebuilt a fractured duchy from rubble and humility. But walking into a room where Seraphine will see him as a colleague rather than a mistake feels more dangerous than any battlefield. She enters 10 minutes later, surrounded by advisors who peel away to their own delegations. Her eyes find his across the chamber. She nods. Professional, neutral. It is a start. The first session is procedural, establishing protocols, defining voting structures. Boring work that lays foundations for everything that follows. Alaric contributes where appropriate, defers when others know better, and watches how Seraphine operates in this environment. She is extraordinary. Not because she dominates the conversation, but because she shapes it. A question here that reframes an argument. A suggestion there that turns conflict into synthesis. She is conducting an orchestra where every instrument believes it is playing solo. During a break, they find themselves alone on a terrace overlooking the harbor. The same terrace where she once told him he had not changed enough. The memory hangs between them like smoke. Seraphine speaks first. You were quiet in there. The old you would have filled every silence. The old me did not understand that silence is also a tool. She almost smiles. Progress. They stand in uncomfortable quiet, watching ships navigate the harbor below. Finally, Alaric breaks. I do not know how to do this. Do what? Work with you. Be near you without trying to control you or prove something. I spent so long performing that I do not know what the real version looks like. Seraphine turns to face him fully, her expression softer than he has seen in years. The real version is exactly what you just said. Uncertain. Honest. Trying. That is all anyone can ask. What if I fail? Then you fail. And we adjust. That is what partnerships do. They absorb failure and keep building. She pauses, searching his face. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Alaric. I'm asking you to be present, to see me as I am, and let me see you the same way. No masks, no performances. Just two people trying to create something that matters more than our egos. Can you do that? Alaric takes a breath, feeling the weight of every mistake he has made pressing against his chest. I can try. Then try. And when you fail, which you will, try again. She extends her hand, not as a duchess, not as a strategist, just as a woman offering a chance he does not deserve, and she is giving anyway. He takes it. The handshake lasts 3 seconds. But in those seconds, something shifts. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but the possibility that two people who destroyed each other might build something better from the wreckage. The council work is brutal. 12-hour sessions debating trade regulations, border disputes, resource allocation. Every decision requires consensus among 6 nations with competing interests. Compromises are agonizing. Progress is glacial. Alaric struggles. His instinct is still to push, to dominate, to force outcomes through sheer will. But the structure does not allow it. Every time he tries to bulldoze a decision, Seraphine or another delegate gently redirects. Not with cruelty, with the patience of people who have seen this pattern before and know it leads nowhere. 3 months into the process, Alaric loses his temper during a debate over mining rights. He slams his hand on the table and demands a vote, overriding objections with the kind of authority he used to wield in Ravarin. The room goes silent, not in fear, in disappointment. Seraphine speaks, her voice calm but sharp. Duke Voss, we do not function by decree here. If you have a proposal, present it. If others have concerns, address them. But do not mistake volume for leadership. The rebuke lands like a slap. Alaric feels his face flush with shame and anger. Every instinct screams to defend himself, to assert dominance, to prove he is still someone who commands respect. Instead, he takes a breath and forces the words out. You are right. I apologize. Let us return to the objections and address them properly. The room relaxes. The debate continues. And Alaric learns another lesson in the difference between power and authority. Power is taken, authority is earned, and earning it requires swallowing pride until it stops tasting like poison. That night, Seraphine finds him in the archive room, reviewing trade data he should have examined before the session. She sits across from him without asking permission. That was hard for you today. It was humiliating. Good. Humility builds better foundations than arrogance. Alaric looks up, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. How do you do it? How do you navigate these sessions without losing yourself? Seraphine considers the question, then answers with the honesty he is learning to value. I lost myself years ago, in your court, in your shadow. I spent so long being invisible that when I finally became visible, I did not know who I was supposed to be. She leans back, her eyes distant. So I decided to become someone who builds systems instead of empires. Someone who values competence over charisma. Someone who measures success by what survives after I am gone, not what I control while I am here. She refocuses on him. You're still figuring out who you are without the performance. That is terrifying, but it is also the only path to becoming someone worth being. What if I never figure it out? Then you keep trying until you do, or until you die. Either way, the effort matters more than the outcome. It is the most brutal and compassionate thing anyone has ever said to him. 6 months into the council work, a crisis erupts. The Iron Republics, humiliated by their withdrawal from Ravarin, launch a coordinated attack on 2 smaller coalition members simultaneously. It is a test. They are betting the coalition will fracture under pressure, that mutual defense is rhetoric rather than reality. The council convenes an emergency session. Panic fills the room. Some delegates argue for immediate military response. Others push for negotiation. A few suggest abandoning the attacked members to preserve the coalition's core. Alaric listens to the chaos and recognizes the pattern. Fear masquerading as pragmatism. Self-interest disguised as strategy. It is the same calculation that led him to betray Seraphine years ago. Protect yourself first. Let others burn if it keeps you safe. He sees Seraphine watching the debate, her face unreadable. She has not spoken yet. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting to see who will step forward. Alaric stands. The room quiets. We formed this coalition on a principle, that we are stronger together than apart, that mutual defense is not conditional on convenience. If we abandon our allies now because protecting them is difficult, we prove the Republic's right. We prove that this alliance is a fiction. He pauses, meeting the eyes of delegates around the table. Ravarin will commit troops, not because we can afford it, but because this is what we agreed to. And if our word means nothing, then nothing we build here will last. Seraphine speaks for the first time, her voice cutting through the tension. The coastal protectorates commit as well. Full military support, no conditions. Other delegates follow, slowly, reluctantly, but they follow. Within 24 hours, coalition forces are mobilizing. Within a week, they engage Republic troops in coordinated operations that force a stalemate. Within a month, the Republics withdraw, their gamble exposed as miscalculation. The coalition holds. After the crisis passes, Seraphine approaches Alaric in the same archive room where they have fallen into the habit of late-night conversations. You did not have to commit Ravarin forces. You could have let others take the lead. Alaric looks up from reports detailing casualty figures. Ravarin lost 43 soldiers, 43 names he will write letters about, 43 families who trusted him to use their sacrifice wisely. If I let others lead every time there is risk, I am not a partner, I am a passenger. She sits across from him, studying his face in the lamplight. You have changed, truly changed, not just in strategy, but in substance. He sets down the report. I had no choice. The man I was would have destroyed everything again. Seraphine reaches across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. You did have a choice. You chose to become someone different. That is harder than people think. Most never manage it. Her hand closes the distance, fingers resting lightly on his. I see you now, Alaric. Not the performance, not the title. You. And what I see is someone trying to be worthy of trust. What do you see when you look at us? She does not pull her hand away. I see two people who destroyed each other learning to build something that will not collapse the moment one of us stops holding it up. Is that enough? It is a start, and starts are all we ever get. The touch lasts only a moment before she withdraws, standing to leave, but the weight of it remains long after she is gone. Betrayal. A year into the council work, Alaric returns to Ravarin for the first time in months. The citadel feels different, smaller, less imposing. Or maybe he has just grown beyond the need to be impressed by stone and banners. The duchy is stable, not prosperous, not powerful, but functional. The council he established governs competently in his absence. Trade flows, taxes are collected, disputes are mediated. It is boring, effective, everything a government should be. Lord Gren meets him at the gate, older now, his hair fully gray, but his eyes still sharp. Your Grace. Welcome home. The title feels strange. Alaric has spent so long being Duke Voss the representative that Duke Voss the sovereign seems like a costume he no longer fits. How is everything? Gren gestures toward the council chambers. Functioning. We have had our disagreements, but nothing we could not resolve. The system you built is working. You mean the system Seraphine told me to build? Gren smiles. The system you had the courage to implement. Credit where it is due. They walk through the citadel, and Gren provides updates. Agricultural yields are up. A new trade agreement with the steppes is increasing revenue. The northern territories are stable under the formalized treaty. It is everything Alaric once wanted: security, stability, a duchy that functions, but it feels hollow. Because the work that matters, the work that challenges him, is happening elsewhere. That night, Alaric stands in his old chambers, the same rooms where he once performed dominance for audiences that no longer exist. The portraits of his ancestors stare down from the walls, faces frozen in expressions of judgment and expectation. He takes them down, all of them, replaces them with nothing. The walls look bare, empty, honest. it is an improvement. 18 months into the coalition, the council faces its hardest test. Not external threat, but internal division. Two member states are on the brink of war over a border dispute that predates the coalition by decades. Both sides demand the council choose. Both threaten to leave if the decision goes against them. It is the kind of crisis that destroys alliances, that proves mutual interest is weaker than historical hatred. The council debates for days. Arguments become accusations. Voices rise. The table that was supposed to represent unity becomes a battleground of competing grievances. Seraphine tries to mediate. So does Alaric. So do a dozen other delegates. Nothing works. The positions are entrenched. The anger is real. On the fifth day, as the session devolves into shouting, Alaric stands and does something no one expects. He proposes that Ravarin cede territory, a strip of land bordering both disputing nations. Not valuable, but symbolically significant. A neutral buffer zone administered jointly by the coalition. The room goes silent. One of the disputing delegates speaks, confusion replacing anger. Why would you give up your own land? Alaric meets his eyes. Because this coalition matters more than Ravarin's pride. If we fracture over this, everything we built is wasted. But if we demonstrate that we are willing to sacrifice for the collective good, we create a precedent stronger than any treaty. He turns to the other disputing nation. I am not asking you to surrender your claims. I am asking you to build something new on ground that belongs to all of us. The proposal is radical, possibly insane. It requires Alaric to convince his own council back in Ravarin to approve territorial concession with no material benefit. But it breaks the deadlock. The disputing nations agree to the buffer zone. The crisis passes, the coalition survives. Afterward, Seraphine finds Alaric alone, staring at maps that now show Ravarin slightly smaller than before. You gave up land, actual sovereign territory. I gave up dirt and pride. In exchange for proving this alliance can survive internal conflict. She sits beside him, closer than she has allowed herself in years. The old you would have never made that choice. The old me would have watched the coalition collapse and blamed everyone else. He turns to face her. I learned from the best teacher I ever had. She taught me that power is not about what you hold. It is about what you build. And sometimes building requires letting go. Seraphine's eyes glisten, though no tears fall. I never thought I would see you become this person. I never thought I could. They sit in silence, the weight of years and choices pressing down like atmosphere before a storm. Finally, Seraphine speaks, her voice barely above a whisper. I spent so long hating you, then pitying you, then being confused by you, and now I think I might be able to forgive you. Alaric's breath catches. I do not deserve forgiveness. No, you do not. But I'm tired of carrying the weight of what you did, and I think you have suffered enough to earn the possibility of starting over. She takes his hand, not as a gesture of romance, but as an acknowledgement of shared history and uncertain future. We are not going back to what we were. That version of us was toxic. But maybe we can build a version that is not. Maybe we can be colleagues who trust each other, friends who respect each other. Maybe, eventually, something more. She squeezes his hand, but that requires you to keep being the person you are becoming, not the person you were. I will. Do not promise. Just do it. Every day. Until it stops being effort and starts being who you are. She releases his hand and stands. I have to go. Council session in the morning. Seraphine, she pauses at the door. Thank you for not giving up on me when you had every reason to. She does not turn around. I did not do it for you. I did it because the world needs people who can change. And you are proof it is possible. She leaves. And Alaric sits alone with the knowledge that redemption is not a destination. It is a direction. And he has finally learned which way to walk. 3 years after joining the coalition, Alaric stands in the joint council chamber during a celebration. The alliance has formalized its structure, expanded to include 2 more nations, and established economic integration that has raised living standards across the region. Speeches are made. Toasts are raised. Delegates who once eyed each other with suspicion now share jokes and stories. Seraphine gives the closing address, her voice carrying the authority of someone who shaped this reality from nothing. We began this coalition on a belief that mutual interest could overcome historical division, that collaboration could replace domination, that power shared is stronger than power hoarded. She pauses, her eyes scanning the room and landing briefly on Alaric. We have proven that belief. Not perfectly, not without cost, but undeniably. What we built here will outlive all of us. And that is the only victory that matters. Applause fills the chamber. Alaric joins it, watching Seraphine accept recognition she finally does not have to steal or hide. Later, on the terrace where their journey toward reconciliation began, they stand together watching the sun set over the harbor. Do you ever regret it? Seraphine asks. Giving up absolute power for this? Every day. And never. She glances at him, curiosity in her eyes. How can both be true? Because part of me still wants to be the man who commanded rooms through fear, who took what he wanted without asking, who believed he was entitled to everything simply because he was strong enough to claim it. He turns to face her, but that man was hollow, powerful but empty. And I would rather be this version, uncertain, collaborative, building something that does not require me to destroy people to maintain it, even if it means being less, especially if it means being less, because less can be more if what you are is real. Seraphine nods slowly. I spent years building power to escape you, to prove I did not need you, and I succeeded. But the thing I built was lonely, impressive but isolated. She looks at him. This, what we are building together, is harder, messier. But it feels like something that might actually last. Are we building something together, or are we just colleagues who share history? I do not know yet, and I am okay with not knowing. So am I. They stand in comfortable silence as the sun bleeds into the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. Finally, Seraphine speaks. I forgive you, Alaric, not because you earned it, but because holding on to anger was making me into someone I do not want to be. He feels the words like a key turning in a lock he did not know was closed. I do not know if I can forgive myself. Then spend the rest of your life trying, and maybe someday you will get there. She steps closer, close enough that he can feel the warmth of her presence. We are not going to have some dramatic reconciliation, no passionate reunion, no fairy tale ending. What we have is two people who hurt each other learning to be in the same room without bleeding. Is that enough? It is more than enough. It is real. She takes his hand, and this time the touch is not professional or symbolic. It is human, fragile, honest. They stand together as darkness falls. Two people who built empires and lost them, who destroyed each other and learned to rebuild, who discovered that the hardest power to claim is not dominance over others, but mastery over yourself. But 5 years after the coalition's formation, Alaric and Seraphine co-author a treatise on collaborative governance. It becomes required reading in diplomatic academies across the region, not because it is revolutionary, but because it is honest about the cost of transformation and the value of systems that outlive their creators. The dedication reads simply, to those brave enough to admit they were wrong and disciplined enough to become something better. Raverin thrives in its modest way. The council governs. The people prosper within the limits of their resources. Alaric visits occasionally, but his real work is with the coalition, shaping policy and mediating disputes, and proving every day that he is more than the sum of his worst choices. Seraphine rises to lead the coalition's economic council, her brilliance finally recognized and credited. She builds networks that span continents, creates systems that lift thousands out of poverty, and leaves fingerprints on a future she will never see. They do not marry, do not live together, do not perform the kind of romance that spectators expect, but they build a partnership, messy, imperfect, real. They argue. They disagree. Sometimes they avoid each other for weeks because proximity is too complicated, but they always come back, because what they created is bigger than comfort or convenience. It is a choice, made every day, to see each other clearly and choose collaboration anyway. What? 10 years after everything collapsed, Alaric stands in the rebuilt Raverin council chamber. He is older now, his hair white, his body marked by years of travel and work. But his eyes are clearer than they have ever been. Lord Gren, ancient now but still sharp, sits beside him. You have been Duke for 30 years. Your father ruled for 40. You have exceeded his tenure. I have exceeded his cruelty. That is enough. Gren smiles. You have exceeded his legacy. Ravarin is stable, allied, respected. Not feared, respected. That is rarer. Alaric looks around the chamber at council members debating agricultural subsidies with the kind of passion that used to be reserved for declarations of war. I did not do this alone. No one does anything alone, but you chose to acknowledge that. Your father never did. A messenger enters, carrying correspondence from the coalition. Alaric opens it. Inside, a note from Seraphine. New crisis. Trade dispute between northern states. Your expertise needed. Come when you can, or do not. We will manage either way. But I prefer when you are here. It is not a love letter. It is better. It is an invitation to work, to contribute, to matter without dominating. Alaric writes back immediately. I will be there in 3 days. Save me the difficult negotiations. I have gotten better at those. He sends it and turns back to Gren. I am leaving for the protectorates tomorrow. Of course you are. Gren stands, extending his hand. You have become a good man, Alaric. Not perfect, but good. That is the hardest transformation anyone achieves. They shake, and Alaric feels the weight of decades lifting slightly. Because he is not the man who ruled through fear. He is not the man who possessed and discarded and destroyed. He is a man who learned, who changed, who built something that will outlast him. And in the end, that is the only dominance worth pursuing. On his last night in Ravarin before departing for the coalition, Alaric walks through the citadel alone. He passes the grand hall where he once delivered speeches claiming credit for work he did not do. The war room where he plotted dominance instead of collaboration. The chambers where he performed authority while extracting brilliance from someone he refused to see. The ghosts are still there, but they no longer control him. He climbs to the highest tower and looks out over the duchy. Lights flicker in windows. Smoke rises from chimneys. Life continues in its small, persistent way, indifferent to the dramas of power that once consumed him. Somewhere in the coastal protectorates, Seraphine is doing the same work he will join tomorrow, building systems, solving problems, creating foundations that will hold long after both of them are dust. They are not lovers. They are not even friends in the conventional sense, but they are partners. And partnership, built on honesty and equality and the willingness to fail together, is the strongest bond humans can forge. Alaric takes a breath, feeling the night air fill his lungs, and allows himself a moment of peace. He was a tyrant. He was a fool. He was a man who believed dominance was the same as worth. But he changed, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Because the alternative was becoming something even he could not live with. And in that transformation, painful and incomplete and ongoing, he found something he never had when he ruled through fear. Purpose, not power, not control, not the ability to make people bow, but the knowledge that he is building something that matters. With someone who sees him clearly and chooses to work with him anyway. That is the only victory that endures. That is the only dominance worth claiming. The dominance over yourself, over your worst instincts, over the seductive lie that taking is the same as earning. Duke Alaric Voss will never be great. His name will not echo through history like his father's or grandfather's, but he will be real and honest and worthy of the trust people place in him. And in the quiet accounting of a life well lived, that is enough. He descends the tower and prepares for tomorrow's journey. The work continues. The partnership endures. The story, like all real stories, has no clean ending. Just the ongoing choice to be better than you were yesterday, and the courage to make that choice again tomorrow. That is how empires fall, and how people rise from the wreckage. Not through dominance, but through the hard, unglamorous work of becoming someone worth being. Alaric Voss learned that lesson, at terrible cost, over agonizing years. But he learned it, and in a world built on illusions of power, that single truth is revolutionary. Power is not a throne, it is not a crown. It is not the ability to command silence or instill fear. Power is the capacity to build systems that function without you, to create structures that outlive your ego, to leave something better than you found it. That is the only dominance worth pursuing, and the only legacy worth leaving behind.